Welcome to See You at the Table, where stories meet grace. Here we gather, not just to speak, but to listen. If you want to witness how God brings people together from all around the world through powerful testimonies, tune in and see you at the table. Here's today's host.
Well, welcome back to the table. We're excited. We have an awesome guest today. He's been our chapel speaker and our Missions Week guest. We're doing Missions Week this week, and it's a week that focuses on helping people know about missions and connect. And Patrick Whyte from Cincinnati area, a pastor, a speaker, a dad, a husband, but we're really excited to have you on here today.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, we like to ask some really simple questions, but they usually lead really all over the place, and it's really fun. But one of the basic questions we love to ask is, tell us a little bit about your faith journey or something that you would, highlight, maybe even about missions, something that stands out for you.
Well, I think what comes to mind for me is the very beginning, this journey, getting to this point of being a speaker, a pastor, and traveling and doing what I do, preaching, began at home. My mom pretty much was the faithful churchgoer. She happened to have a Catholic background, and so Dad worked for an oil company and traveled a lot, was out of the house quite a bit.
Oh, wow.
And so on weekends, Mom was the one that had all the kids, and she took us to church. And, so that was the beginning of my exposure to anything Christianity. And so the Catholic Church was the foundation, so to speak, exposing me to the Bible. And that was my early years. But, of course, one of my sisters later on went off to college. And while at college, actually had the gospel preached to her, and she trusted in Christ.
Oh, wow.
And then came back home and started sharing the gospel with all of us. So I wish I could sit here and just say, wow, we were just like, hey, thank you so much for coming to share the good news of the gospel with us. And but we were not very receptive because we were like, we go to church already, so we don't need you telling us about getting to know Jesus. But she persisted. I give her credit. She persisted, kept on sharing the gospel, and eventually, one by one, we all began to trust in Christ. Now, my experience was different, not directly, but through her, the Lord set up a situation where there was a crusade taking place in town, and it's almost like you live in New York, but you've never been to Yankee Stadium.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're given the opportunity to go to Yankee Stadium. Yeah. So I heard about the crusade. I wasn't so much interested in the crusade as much as I wanted to go to our version of Yankee Stadium, the National Stadium. Yeah. So I jumped on the free bus that was provided and got there, and I was sitting in one of the topmost bleachers of the stadium, and the preacher preached and came out of John 3:16. And at the very end, he just gave this call, and he said, if you were to die tonight and you were to stand before God and he were to ask you why he should let you into his heaven, what would you say? Well, for the first time, it hit me. And, everything my sister had been talking about all came to a head, plus the sermon of that day, that if I were to die in that moment, I was not going to heaven. And so right there and then I gave my life to Christ, and this was sophomore year in high school that happened. So that was the foundation. So when I think back, how did I get here? That was the first yes.
Well, that's
Jesus.
And that's not an easy thing to do. Sharing faith within your family, I think, is almost one of the more difficult things to do. By the way, I forgot to introduce. We got, instead of Holland with us today, Cordell's helping us lead out on the podcast, and so. This is an apologetic kind of man, so he may have some hard questions for you. But
all right.
I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead, man.
I always kind of like this illustration. One of the first words Jesus says, I think it's particularly in John's Gospel, he says, "Come and see." And you described your coming to Jesus moment. But in the last part of Matthew's Gospel, Matthew 28, the Great Commission, often kind of nowadays it's the Great Omission by a lot of Christians, but he says to go. So you talked for a minute about you're coming to Jesus and Him finding you. But particularly this week, being Missions Week, how has your going been? How has kind of the mission kind of life been for you? How have you been able to live on mission for Jesus?
Yeah. Well, thanks for that question, because that's the connection. That was the first yes, was coming to Jesus. The next yes was now the call to ministry. I think that was about a year later, my junior year, and I shared that story a little bit in the Vine and gave that a little bit today, which was, after I got saved, I wasn't reading the Bible that much, and maybe a little bit more in the New Testament than Old.
Yeah.
And and I was just trying to understand all that's going on in Christianity. So I joined a group, a Bible study group, but I was just doing the normal Christian thing, just kind of routine of you go to church and you go to the groups and all. But I had not yet, in a way, said yes to Jesus in terms of the going aspect, the Matthew 28 you're talking about. So I'd heard about this guy. I was in a boarding school, by the way.
Okay.
So I'd heard about this guy. He's about 4 foot or something, and firebrand for Jesus.
Okay.
His name was going around school. If you meet him, you can't get away from him because he's got to talk to you about Jesus.
Right.
So one evening, providentially, I was just hanging around, and he happened to be there, walking on the same path. And so we sat down. I said, "Hey, I've heard about you," and started asking him about his walk with Christ. By the time I finished that conversation with him, heard stories of him going into villages, sharing the gospel, witch doctors chasing him out of the town because they didn't want the gospel there, and people are getting saved by this little guy. Yeah. I mean, he's compared to me, of course, it's like little guy. And so I went back to my room, also determined to know why I'm here, because he said specifically to me in that conversation, for me, to live is to tell people about Jesus. It was very clear, very distinct purpose. As we talked this morning, Romans 15, Paul said, it's always been my ambition, to preach Christ. And so I went back and I'm like, I don't have that kind of clarity, and I don't have that kind of a passion. I'm saved. I go to church, and that I think I'm good, but I'm hearing somebody else there's a fire here. And so I went back to my room and knelt down, and I said, God, and this was almost literally what I said, I'm not going to give you or heaven rest until I know why you put me here.
It's like you're wrestling.
The Jacob kind
I was going to say, very much.
Yes. And so that began that journey. The Lord was almost very quick to respond to me. Slept that night in a dream, saw myself in an amphitheater setting. I'm not one of the woo-woo guys, kind of like an angel came and literally spoke to me kind of guy. Yeah. But man, I woke up the next morning. I didn't even go to brush my teeth or have breakfast. I rolled on my knees from my bed. And I said, God, I'm back. I said, I'm here because I want to know. And just like somebody would put a screen up and show you a movie, in my memory as I was praying and asking God, show me, the whole thing, the dream came back.
Really?
Here it is.
What was the dream again? Like what was?
I was in an amphitheater-like setting, and I was preaching. And I saw that again. It came back as I was praying. I was like, no, that cannot be it. I said, I'm the shy guy, as I've been explaining, and 3 is a crowd. An amphitheater is really pretty much signed my death sentence.
Right.
I was like, there's no way I'm going to survive. Yeah. But there was what I call an unsettling peace that came over me. God made it very clear, this is what I'm calling you to. So I broke down in tears, crying, and then pleading for help. 3 things I think I shared also about. I asked him for 3 things. Give me a love for your word. Give me a passion to pray. And when I speak, I pray that people would listen, because I didn't think I had anything worth listening to say to people. So since then, I've lived with those 3 things. So the going, that was the beginning. And then after that, I started sharing. I shared about my classroom. I graduated high school and started having a burden to tell people. And I went in front of my classmates my freshman year of law school in Nigeria, actually, so educational system. You can study law as a first degree.
Oh.
So you can graduate high school and go and study. So my freshman year, I was able to, the first yes to go was to speak to my classmates before the professor came in, and to see people give their lives to Christ in response to that lit the fire. And since then, I've said a lot of yeses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. I see that kind of trend with a lot of people that are called into ministry,
Yeah.
and it kind of is the same with me.
Yeah.
There's a hesitancy about it. It's like me, Lord, really? I mean, why me? You know, because I remember, especially high school me, middle school me, I was totally introverted. There's no way I'd speak in front of people. But now God has me speaking to churches, you know, every Sunday now, and it's so fascinating to see how God He doesn't necessarily call us because we're qualified, but He qualifies us because He's called us.
Yes.
And I've always heard that said, and you hear that so often with people called to ministry. This idea of, man, I couldn't do that.
Yes.
And God's like, I have better plans. Just watch and see, or come and see. There we go. Yeah.
Man, that's it stirs up so many questions, so many thoughts, and I've heard some of your story in the last 24 hours, and it's just been really interesting. And so much more I'd want to talk about, but that's probably one of the big questions that college students or young adults. What am I going to do? Where am I supposed to go? What does it look like? So as you continue to go through that, how did that call or that leading develop? Like, what were some things that happened in that journey where you just continued to respond to the Lord in obedience? If you could share a little bit about that journey and what that looked like.
So, so that next year, yes, of going and speaking, that was freshman year. So my sophomore year studying law, the burden only just grew.
Okay.
And to share the gospel, it's almost like, man, you have a taste.
You can't go back.
And you can't go back.
Yeah.
It's like it's there and it's permanent. And so I was just trying to read to grow, to be able to do this better. Because, butterflies in my stomach. Only God knows what I said on that first day. I can't even remember what I preached about exactly. But God was just gracious. But I knew that I needed to grow in my knowledge, in my ability to deliver the gospel properly. And so I was reading a lot of books, and a lot of them were from America. I've been in Africa. And when I would look on the back of those books, the authors were people who had been trained theologically.
Okay.
And so that was one thing that I now added to my prayers was, Lord, equip me. These books I'm reading that are a blessing to me, these people were trained. I was like, Lord, train me to be better. And as Timothy says, Paul says to Timothy, is rightly handling the word of truth, being a workman who's approved.
Yes.
And so that became my prayer. So I spent time fasting and praying.
Yeah.
Now, the route the Lord took
a little wild.
So that prayer was different from anything I expected. So as a sophomore in college then, I was, my sports were soccer, basketball, volleyball, and tennis.
I could see volleyball and basketball.
Soccer was there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And tennis. And so, what do you call it? Basketball was not a part of it. So I went home on holidays. We had a break, and I was walking out the street going home. I don't remember from where I was coming, and I saw this other guy. He was 6'6". Later found out his name was Emmanuel. You know what that means, God with us.
Yeah.
I was later connecting the dots. But Emmanuel is coming, and as tall people do, we kind of check ourselves out.
Oh, really? Who's taller?
Who's taller? So he's coming, and I'm coming. And right as we walked by each other, he said, hey, do you live here? I said, yes. I said, do you live here? He said, yeah. The company my dad worked for, Chevron Oil, had built a residential area.
Oh, wow.
And so in this community, there had a phase 1 and phase 2. So he was like, I've never seen you here before. He said, do you live in phase 1? I said, no, I live in phase 2. So, okay. He said, do you play sports? I said, yeah. I said, do you play basketball? I said, no. He said, do you want to learn? I said, no.
Oh, wow.
Because I had no desires. Like, I had my sports, and he was like, why don't you come this evening? He was kind of a little relentless. It was like, why don't you come this evening, join me in, and just try to see if you like it. It'll be fun. So I was like, okay, what do I have to lose? I'm on holidays, got nothing else doing that evening. So I said, let's go. unbeknownst to me, there is a basketball court right around the corner from where we live. Female basketball players
Ah, okay.
there. So as we were walking up to the court, I'm looking, I was like, oh, it's girls. I thought, oh, I got this.
Oh, no.
Oh, what I didn't know was that was
were
the
good.
female national team
They were good.
of
Yeah.
Nigeria that was practicing on that court.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
So we got there, and I thought I had it. They put me in the game, complete novice. So I turned around for a layup, and this girl comes out of nowhere, Linda, 6'4". She blocked that shot, sent that ball flying to Timbuktu. And everybody's screaming, "No soup for you!" And I was so embarrassed. If a black man could blush, that was my day. And
Because you're 6'10", right?
yeah. It's like, and so I was like, I've got to go back and learn this game. I wish I could say I got into basketball because, man, I was thinking about Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson or Hakeem Olajuwon. No, it was Linda. Linda cut me to
Use your
basketball.
motivation. Yeah.
And the Lord now used that, long story short, to open a door for me to get a basketball scholarship. And two, of all places, a Christian university.
Wow.
So that is how the Lord now brought me, and I studied Biblical Studies Communications as my major.
It's such an intriguing story, but it really does highlight, I think, everyone's story in the sense of how, man, God does just open doors and works in a different way than we're expecting.
Yeah.
We love to kind of put parameters, I think, around how this has to work or what this needs to look like, but his way is a little different than that.
Yeah. And then from there, the Lord led me to Southern Seminary, which was another story of connecting dots. And so when you look back to sophomore year, studying law, God already laid the path out
Wild.
to theological training through basketball.
Yeah.
So we should never despise certain routes. Sometimes God might be using certain things to get us to the destination, but it may look to us like it's a detour, but it's really not.
Man, that thought pops. I think so often we turn the route in which God is using to get us there into an idol.
Yes.
Instead of, so it's easy for the sport to become the idol of what this is about instead of realizing, no, God has a deeper meaning and purpose for this to actually get you here and to do this,
Well, that almost happened to me, confession, because when I got to America, basketball is a whole different beast here.
Right.
And the exposure to Booster Club members, we went to national tournament stuff, and so it started getting into my head that maybe perhaps what the Lord really wanted me to do was become a famous basketball player. And so I started thinking that was the route. So I was training and all of those things. And so happened again, one of the tournaments I went to, a scout came to me and also spoke to me. He said, man, keep working at this. And, you could go places. Now, imagine that being said to you. That got in my head.
Yeah, that's stuff.
And so I was now like, oh, full throttle. God, I will talk about Jesus when I'm on TV, when I make the millions.
Right.
I will give you praise.
Yeah.
And God is like, nope, that's not what we're doing. You're here to go to seminary to get trained. And I got hurt in basketball twice and had to undergo surgery. It was the second time my leg dangling up and in a cast that I had a come to Jesus moment. And it was almost like very clearly that evening, I remember in that bed in someone's home, that the Lord just made clear. I had this conversation. It was like, Lord, I'm getting close to graduation. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And my life in a nutshell again, the story came back to me. Here's what I've called you to. And I was like, but Lord, what about the basketball? I could still.
Yeah.
I
I'm
was
always
still
hanging
pushing.
on to that,
I was still hanging on.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I could tweak your knee again. I was like, no,
maybe
don't touch the
not,
knee
maybe
again. I'm like, I'm good. And I made that day in that bed, I made the decision finally to just stay put and follow ministry, and that till today. And I wouldn't regret it at all.
Yeah, well, thank you for kind of joining us on the podcast. The legacy with this podcast, what tip, like maybe 15, 30 seconds, what tip can you bring to the table for someone out there today?
I would, if I would encourage students at this point, I think it would be to be willing. I think of all the things that we could say about following Jesus, God is the penultimate gentleman. He presents to us his grace and all that he's done for us. And he invites us to join him. at the table. And I think all we are asked to do and given the freedom to do is to say yes to Jesus. And that first yes is the beginning of a journey of a lifetime. And anyone who says yes has a blast. And so that's where I am. And that's the advice I'd give anyone. Say yes to Jesus.
Patrick, thanks so much, and thanks for blessing our campus today.
Thank you.
But maybe, hopefully, we'll get to connect again sometime soon.
Hey, I hope so. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Until next time, we'll see you at the table.
This podcast is brought to you by Campus Ministry at Campbellsville University, where faith, testimony, and dialogue come together. Stay connected, stay inspired, and we'll see you at the table next time.